Okay, we're live on the decision table today. And here's the thing. You've got me on the decision table today. Wow, what an amazing last series that we had. I mean, I had, conversations every single day of the month around what I believe, and I still stand true to it even after 30 different conversations, actually 31 conversations, the need for a new approach to leadership. If you missed out on those, make sure you go to our YouTube channel and become one of our subscribers there. We don't have that many there right now, but we would love for you to be a subscriber on YouTube, on our channel, The Decision Table. And that'll make sure, by the way, that for future decision tables, you'll know when they're coming up. And also, any that you've missed out on, that you catch up on it. And I would recommend it. I seriously would. It's there were just amazing conversations on the decision table over January. And a lot of it was conversations that I get to talk about these topics, but to hear it through a different lens and to see how it's impacting those that are this is their world as well, and to see how as leaders we can be more effective. Gosh, it was such an interesting time. So here's the thing. I was doing it as a once off thing of being every day for the month of January. But we realized how powerful it was. We realized the impact that it was creating and the momentum that it was creating. And so I'm willing to keep doing the decision tables as a regular thing and to keep learning to how we can do this more effectively. I think for those that have been on the decision table, you would know that I didn't do any big intros before the decision table. I just get people straight on. I don't even introduce them necessarily. I continue to introduce them as we are going through our conversation. And there's a reason to that. Because I think there's so easy for us to identify with our name. Oh, I know that person. She's and we start putting our own biases on what we think we're going to get from the conversation. And I truly want to create a space here on the decision table where I'm getting to know someone better. I'm connecting because I'm really, truly wanting to listen. And I have to say, I have to listen up really hard because there's many guests on here I've never met before. I've never connected with before. I don't know anything about their world. And that's not always easy for any of us to have those conversations. That's when it can be an uncomfortable conversation, right? But I think that it's a very important conversation. And as we continue evolving as leaders, we need to learn to have these conversations more. And so that's why I did it throughout January, having a different person on so that we can start looking through the different lens. Wow. The good news is, yes, we have completed the whole month, the whole series on the need for a new approach to leadership. I'm going to be writing a white paper around it so that I can not just hear these conversations, not just have this, but continue to add it and the value that I've gained from these conversations, and the value that I feel continues to be what I'm learning inside the world that I'm working in as well. And here's the thing. I love patterns. So anyone that knows me knows that I'm fascinated with patterns. And this kind of began when I was a much younger girl, and I know I've mentioned it before. I've not always had the best upbringing. I've been in and out of families from a very, very young age. And because of that, my environments were very, very unpredictable. And there were many things that happened or occurred throughout those that definitely didn't give me voice, wasn't adding value to me, and in fact created, really tough environment for me to begin to find out what it really looked like for me. And I knew that if I continued the pathway that I was continuing at that point as a young girl and a teenager growing up, that I wouldn't survive beyond my teenage years, let alone into young adulthood. And so I became fascinated. Why did some people, have amazing success? And I even looked at, what does success even look like? What could it look like? And I began figuring out, what was it that I wanted? What would that need to look like? And I realized very, very quickly, if I continued the same patterns that I was doing in my life now, that would have to, it was literally going to end up dead. I mean, I could muck around, but that's the truth of it. And there's so much in my story that I could tell you about things like that. And I've got proof that I literally would have ended up dead. But I can tell you that there was something in me that said, I've made it through this challenge. I've got through this piece. Maybe I'm meant to be here for a reason. Maybe there's something I'm meant to do, something I'm meant to learn from this. Maybe even if I get through this, maybe, just maybe, even I could help someone else. And I began looking at what pathways could I choose if I didn't choose this pathway. And I know for me, hey, Troy, good to see you here. So good to see you here, and welcome. I know for me that this was a tricky thing, because I didn't know what my pathways were, what my opportunities were, what could be an alternative pathway for me to walk forward into. But I was so wanting to know, because I saw others could succeed. I saw others, even when they had a bad environment that they were brought up in, even when they didn't have maybe access to the education that others had had. Maybe they weren't, they didn't have people that had their back, and yet they were able to be successful or have success or turn out not just okay, but actually thriving in life. And so it became this fascination for me to work out, how do I get that? What would that need to look like? And I began this journey of going and really asking questions and figuring out what the patterns were to get me down a different pathway. What I realized when I did this, and this is a huge piece, is that I realized that when I asked different questions, I got different responses. Or when I asked different people, depending what their environment was, their variables, I always call them, depending what that looked like, depending how, who they were hanging out with, what their beliefs were, their values, that this would change the patterns of the results or the outcomes at the table. And I became fascinated. And I tell you this because this next series, this next topic that we're bringing to the decision table is another white paper that I will be writing on. And this white paper is the importance to increase the muscle of human intelligence. What I learned was that patterns help us to make better data-driven decisions. And that data is not coming necessarily from the next AI, the piece of technology, or even through other people. It's the data that you have been able to gather through your brain. And I think this is a fascinating thing. What if we could actually understand the data from our brain, and then here's the thing, we keep the wiring that's working, the thing that's working for us, getting us the results that we're wanting, the outcomes that we're needing. And we keep our wiring to that. But I don't know about you, if I'd kept on that pathway, if I'd kept that wiring going, because this is what was the thing. It was the wiring that I had that needed to be shifted, because I didn't know what wiring I needed. I didn't necessarily know what other things to wire to. And so what I did was what if I did know that? What would I need to look at? And if I wired to something different, what was that going to give me? What behaviors would I have? And then what outcome? We have a brain, a fascinating brain, that if we are able to access the data from that brain, oh my goodness, the things that we can do, the decisions we can make, our capacity that we can bring. I just talked on a podcast about the word limitless. This is where limitless comes into play. It is limitless. We have so many brain cells. Here's the thing, and something I always found fascinating was we had all these brain cells and we don't always access those brain cells. But what if we were? Would that change the data that we have in our brains? Absolutely. But we need to know how to do that. So this became the foundation to a lot of the work that I do. And I know it sounds geeky, and I know that it sounds like, what the heck are you talking about, Kerry Marie? I love it, and I can talk about it for hours and hours and hours, but I won't. But what I learned was there are many different ways we can access our data to get the outcome that we're wanting or needing at the table. And here's the other piece that I just find so amazing. What if, just what if, we had more leaders, more humans choosing to make better decisions because they could access what I call the muscle of human intelligence, your data. You are, and I've had to learn this, that I am unique. I think very differently to everyone else. I think there are some common things that I do connect on that I do think very similar because maybe we've had similar experiences. But I process things very differently. So how do we start having more distinctions at a table when people think so differently, do things so differently? And you know what? There's some similarities we can connect on. And the more muscle of human intelligence, the more you can have those uncomfortable conversations that we have talked about so many times already on the decision table that is needed to bring change right now across the globe. Your capacity to be able to connect with someone who may think and look and act differently to you will actually accelerate. And your ability and capacity to know that you bring goodness, you don't need to prove that. You don't even need to be agreed upon or given permission. You know it because you already know you have amazing data inside of your brain and you know how to access that. I believe this will change the conversations we are having at the table, and we will be able to come as humans bringing those conversations to a different level and getting different results at the table. This is why I believe this is so important for us to know how to even access the muscle of human intelligence, the intelligence that you bring, the smartness, and then not just be able to access it and what that looks like, but then put it into action. How do I make sure that the decisions I'm making every day are smart decisions, are going to add value to humanity and going to bring change across for me, the leadership landscape, the global leadership landscape. It's actually, so I don't know if you know, but one of the things I did last year, it was the most proudest moment I had last year in my work. It was when I actually put on the Global Human Intelligence Forum. Not only was it at a time after I had that dreaded lurgy, I had the first wave of COVID. It was hideous. And because I have things going on in my body that I was one of those vulnerable. And so when I got hit with COVID, it was 5.5 weeks of literally not getting beyond my bed, wondering if I was going to make it through the night, unable to breathe, living on cups of tea that literally kept my passageway open. And anytime I stopped doing that, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't speak, I couldn't do things. I was totally in isolation for 5.5 weeks. And I thought, if I make this through, what is the one thing that I've always said that I needed to do and needed to make sure that I got done in my life? And it was the Global Human Intelligence Forum. So 6.5 weeks after, when I finally was able to just start the progress of getting better, 5.5 weeks, remember, of being on bed, I then decided, I think it was a delirious moment, by the way, I decided that I was going to put on the Global Human Intelligence Forum. So 6.5 weeks after that, we ran our first annual Global Human Intelligence Forum. Oh my goodness, it was so powerful. I freaked out. 3 days. Why did I freak out? Because the first day was beyond anything that I ever imagined. The second day, I was like, oh no, how are we going to do this again? And then bring it again to another level. Day 2, day 3, and wow. I finished that forum and it was the most powerful thing I've ever done in all of my work. And I was so grateful that I stepped out and that I played a bigger game. I could do it because, and 6.5 weeks, not only play a bigger game, but 6.5 weeks after being hit with COVID and being so ill, not even knowing if I was going to make it through the night. Do you know what was amazing about it? Was I knew I could do it because I had already the data inside of my brain that I knew what I wanted to do. I knew how it needed to happen, and I just acted on it. When you're able to access the muscle of human intelligence, it's amazing what capacity you have. It's amazing what you can put on. Can I just say, the Global Human Intelligence Forum, our mission there is to increase the muscle of human intelligence. And, you know, one of the things that was just became such a powerful thing out of it, I really want to read it to you because I believe that this is that new approach to leadership that we're walking into. It's a time, it's a season where there is a lot of uncertainty, but the more you can access the muscle of human intelligence, I believe the more you can walk forward into an uncertain pathway forward. And this became my whole sort of mantra, not just for the Global Human Intelligence Forum, but I think if we can, it's the movement behind everything that I do. And that is this: global change is a certainty going forward. Solutions will be determined by you and I at the decision table. It is not time to fight for the rights as an individual. It is time to collaborate, to represent 100% for humanity culture, both today, tomorrow, and for the generations to come. It is time to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, to know the importance of all distinctions, and to find the one thing to shift the dial forward by 1%. This will create an awareness to look through the global lens of human intelligence, where humanity think for themselves, who engage in a forward conversation to disrupt patterns, where humanity know how to innovate and implement smart, sustainable solutions, where humanity collaborates in forward culture shifts, where humanity increases the impact of economic and humanity growth. Now is the time for you to take ownership, to stand up and to lead. Success comes when you make the right decisions fast. I think that that was so beautifully like said. I couldn't say it any better. By the way, I wrote that so I can say that. I literally couldn't say it any better. But that's what human intelligence is, when humanity are able to step up and do it in that way. I hope that this month going forward, as we build out on this series of the decision table, that we will hear through different lenses what the muscle of human intelligence can look like, how you can implement that, how you can innovate in new ways. How will this help and be what I call often a secret advantage to really growing your economic growth and changing the culture of humanity as we're going forward? You know, how do we get humans thinking for themselves and giving themselves permission to stand strong and stand up? It's an interesting conversation. And then, like, you know, how do we come and change some of these patterns and not do it as individuals, but as a collaborative and join together as we continue to go forward as a collective? And I just think global change is such a certainty in the uncertain pathway forward. We know there's change. Those that are able to be agile seem to be able to move at a faster pace. Those that are more stuck in the old style or systemic way and are conditioned to certain outcomes, it's a lot harder. And how does that work? Or is it still working? And I think there's much conversation we can have around that. And then, of course, those that are just merely going, I never even thought of using the muscle of human intelligence. What the heck is Kerry Marie even talking about on the decision table today? I'm excited about bringing this in different ways through the people we have, the conversations we're going to have on the decision table, to see how we can, you know, explain it in different ways. We seem to feel, you know, there's some knowledge around things like artificial intelligence. We know what that is. Or do we? We kind of do. I think we do. Okay. Most people know what AI is. And when I bring up HI, human intelligence, have you heard of that before? Do you know what that means? What does that mean for you? And I think, well, artificial intelligence means that we program something, or one human has, or some humans, depending how many are involved in it, have programmed a program, a robot, a something, right? To then spit out what it is that that person or those people have come up with. What if you could spit out of your head the things, the learnings that you've gathered with what you've done in life as a human, and that could add value to us doing it in better ways and more effective ways going forward? I think there's a lot of bonus to that. In fact, I know there is. And, you know, going back to the Global Human Intelligence Forum, where this was really birthed out of in an open forum, I'm excited to see where we'll go with these conversations on the decision table this month. And for those that are interested, by the way, we will be having the next Global Human Intelligence Forum. We're starting to really build that out of what that looks like. And that will be in the first week of June. So I'm pretty excited about that. So I think that this is coming at a time where you can learn more about what that forum will look like as well. So in case you're interested to come and be a part of that. And if you are on this or listening to the replay and are interested in coming and being a part of the Global Human Intelligence Forum, we don't have all that up ready and waiting for you yet, but you know, make sure in the comments that you go hashtag interested, because I think that, you know, I do know what the theme is for the new one coming up. I'm excited about what that is. Do you want to know what it is? Let me have a look. I've got it here. Okay, so the theme is the importance. Wait on, sorry. Let me have a look. Okay, so this year, the Global Human Intelligence Forum is the ability to learn, to understand, and to evolve as a leader. And we're going to be looking at that. So I'm excited about that and what that brings. And for those that weren't at the forum last year, what we did, and I think this is part of using the muscle of human intelligence, is I gave space for certain, and I was very careful who I chose to come and be a part of my speakers on this platform. And they were all very good friends of mine. I mean, amazing global leaders. And anyone that was at the forum will know they are so amazing in their own rights. And I was privileged to be able to have them on my platform. And I chose them because I knew that I could give them space to communicate with the audience what they learn, how they're learning, what that looked like for them in their space. And then a bit like what I do on the decision table, we had a conversation. So I interviewed them, but just really it's just a conversation to pull out deeper levels of the learnings that they had. And then it was an open forum. And some of our topics were things that I think was, firstly, it was such a time and space where there was so much division across the globe. Like racial tension was at its peak at that time. It seriously was. I was getting nervous around having a forum. And our second day, our first thing was, the Kings in their video of the beloved community. And then my twinsy, who identifies himself as American first of African descent, he then spoke. And then I can ask him anything because I've got the relationship with him and he knows that's how I work. And I knew it was going to be beneficial for the forum. So I asked him anything and everything. And then it was an open forum. Now, when racial tensions were at their heightened, to do that on an open forum was a risk, but I can tell you it was so powerful. And the conversations that each one of the speakers brought was a whole different perspective from what they were seeing in what they do. And we talked about gender, we talked about disabilities, we talked about youth having a voice and being able to have a safe place in which they could voice how they're thinking and what that looks like for them. This is the thing that I think when you have other smart people willing to use what I say, the muscle of human intelligence, we can start having these uncomfortable conversations. We can start having a look at things like gender inequality, at the table that many, whether we like it or not, still face. And we start digging down deeply into that, not, by the way, disrespecting other people at the table, not having conversations where it's pulling others down, but it's giving space to listen and to understand, and then for us as leaders to evolve from. And I hope that this year on the Global Human Intelligence Forum, we will literally create a space where we will do that more effectively as leaders. I'm looking forward to being able to do that and to create a space in which we can have an open forum where we are having these conversations that often are uncomfortable. But when you are smart humans, you are able to use that data that this awareness creates to be able to go, I'm taking this piece on, and this works for me and where I'm at and the work that I'm doing, and then putting it out and, being part of the change. Because I always talk about this, but what if everyone was doing their one thing? If you were doing your one thing, would that make a difference? Absolutely. You see, it's so easy for us to go, wow, all these challenges, all these frustrations, all these problems are way too much. They're only way too much if we just don't do what we've got in our hand. See, if I do my one thing, you do your one thing, George down the road does his one thing, Mary does her thing, and we all start doing our 1%. That 1% adds up, and we start shifting from problem to solution. And that, to me, is most powerful because it brings change. It brings a hope for the future. It means that we just don't go, someone else can do this, but each one of us can do something. And if you want to know more about that, check out the 1%movement.com or the Wall of Humanity for the Leaders Movement, because I want more humans who are willing to stand up, to use your muscle of human intelligence to become part of the 1%. And that's one spot you can start doing it. All right, so the muscle of human intelligence, what does that mean for me? I think that it means that we have this data that we can access. It's the uniqueness of what you bring as a human being. I think that the muscle of human intelligence is when you're able to bring and dissect what those is intelligences. Okay, so lenses in which we start moving intelligences into, and figuring out how do we use those to make better decisions, ask better questions, build a culture that we actually want and will thrive in as humans. And, in the leadership field, of course, it will allow us to be more effective in our leadership when we're working with teams to make better decisions around what we're doing, how we do that, how we run meetings. Do you realize that when humans are having to cope with challenges, having to deal with maybe personal things that they can't even comprehend or even want to listen to the change that you might be wanting to bring in your company or organization, because they have no headspace right then. And so it's being aware of these things and then being more inclusive of how do we bring the differences that we need to be more effective in what we're building, the culture we're building, the companies that we're building. There's so much, and I'm looking forward to, and of course, we will make sure I'm not just going to bring one person that's going to tell you how to do it, or that this is the only way to build the muscle of human intelligence. That's what I love about it. There are so many different ways. There are so many strategies we can use to help us to build this in better and more effective ways. And I hope as the days unfold on the decision table over this month, we will learn maybe different reasons to why the muscle of human intelligence will help you, to increase what you're doing, the impact that you're making, the growth in what you might be building in your business, company, organization. These are really, it sounds so crazy when you don't know about the muscle of human intelligence, but I can tell you it has allowed me to see how patterns are formed, and then how we can disrupt those patterns to actually get the result that you are wanting. And I think if more of us were able to do that, we would see change happen at a much faster pace. And it would mean also that we could innovate new things at the decision table. And for me, that sounds so exciting, because it creates opportunity to really open up to anything as possible. And I think that's exciting. So here's the thing. We will be looking for more people to invite on the decision table. So if you think that you have something that could add value around the muscle of human intelligence, then reach out, because I want to get to know you. And I think a great conversation, we could have a great conversation If you are more interested around how this is going to look, then make sure you subscribe to YouTube on our decision table. The link is in the actual where this comes up on your feed. We're there. And so you'll make sure then that if you subscribe, you'll make sure that you're going to be on every decision table and make sure that you don't miss out. But here's the thing. I don't want to tell you. This is not about telling. This is about, the decision table is really an opportunity for us to start thinking, well, okay, if we're hearing what I'm saying today. We're hearing Karen Marie, and she's saying there's a real importance to increasing the muscle of human intelligence. This may just trigger you to think a little different. I've never even thought about the muscle of human intelligence. I don't even know what that means, let alone what it means to me right now. And that's okay. That's why we are having these conversations, because I think that it just creates awareness. So if you think that this will be beneficial for you, have you got questions around the muscle of human intelligence? Have you got questions you want me to make sure that I ask at some stage on here? Then I want you to put those in the comments. I want us to make sure that, and if I don't know the answer, or someone that will have that answer, then I will keep looking for someone that may have an answer to the question that you're asking. And I'll make sure that they are one of the guests, the one of the awesome humans I have on the decision table. I want to make sure this is the best for what you need and how we can best bring more awareness to what, and this is part of the new approach to leadership, is that I think if we use lenses that help to create the muscle of human intelligence, we will have smarter humans making smarter decisions, and humans that can think for themselves. And I am going to say this a lot, because I think our world has, and this is my final sort of thing that I want to bring to our attention today around the muscle of human intelligence. And that is that I think the world has got so conditioned to not thinking for themselves. Humans not thinking for themselves, not just not thinking, but they're not trusting their thinking. And I think that this is going to be some interesting conversations that we will have more of throughout the decision table over this series. And why are we not thinking for ourselves? What is social media? What has that played into it? How's that played into it? What is it? Maybe it's the fact that we're only surrounding ourselves by a certain tribe or culture, and that's all we're hearing. And so because of that, we're being conditioned by that. Interesting concepts and thoughts, right? I think it'll be fun to sort of question down these avenues, depending who's on the decision table, to find out what they're seeing, to see how this is affecting whether we're thinking for ourselves or not. And then the other question of it is, if we were thinking for ourselves, what does that really open up? If more humans were thinking for themselves and then trusting themselves to make better decisions, what would that change? How would that change? What is really what we're seeing across the culture, the global culture across the world right now? And I think that these are great questions to ask and great conversations to have. So I'm looking forward to, of course, this topic, and it is the heart and soul to my work. So I'm really looking forward to this topic. And, if you think it's going to be full on, and you know me, I'll try to make sure that we are keeping it in a way that anyone can kind of learns at least one thing from one of the decision tables. So you might not be able to understand everything if it's not something that you've ever gone down, but the more we listen to things, the more we open up to maybe learning a different way. So I hope that this will open up the platform for you to have an awareness around maybe a topic that you're not used to, maybe a conversations that you're not. But remember, going back to what I really was birthed out of the Global Human Intelligence Forum was, imagine where humanity think for themselves, who engage in a forward conversation and are able to disrupt patterns, where humanity are able to innovate, implement sustainable solutions, collaborate and forward culture shifts, increase the impact of economic growth, and also really build a culture that is adding value to humanity, and then be able to stand strong in it. I mean, who doesn't want that? Don't we want that in our leadership? Don't we want that as leaders? Don't we want that in our sphere of influence, whatever that is that you're building? Don't you want that? I want it. I want to be able to do it more effectively. That's why I love the fact that I believe that leadership is a journey and that we are evolving along this journey, because I'm learning, I'm evolving, and I want to be more effective in the way that I communicate, more effective in the way that I connect with other amazing humans across the world. I want to be able to be more effective in the way that I can use my impact to give voice and advocate for the front line of humanity. Because if I can do that, you can do that. Then this is where that gap that feels so big sometimes between problem and solution, we can start narrowing that. And to me, that is a good day. And I hope you're as excited as I am about what this whole conversation can open up for us, and the series can open up in the way that you lead, in the way that you run teams, in the way that you can move and shift forward from problem to solution. So I hope that you've enjoyed this intro into what is going to be the next series on the decision table. If you have questions, seriously, reach out. You can find me on social media, anywhere that this is on, put it in the comments, because I will be looking at the comments. I will be reaching out to those that, ask questions, want to know more, want to be even on the decision table for this series. Then we'll hook you up with one of our team to figure out whether or not you're a right fit for it, and get you on the and the right fit means I don't want someone that's going to pull things apart. I want someone that wants to question and wants to have a conversation. And if you're about adding value to humanity, then you're the right person. But not everyone is in for that. So just be aware that we will check you out to see if you're the right person, because we want to make sure that you're going to be adding value to the decision table. We don't want to waste people's time. We don't want to waste your time. We want to add value and make sure you reach out if you're the right person, you think you could add some value to this conversation on the decision table. And I hope that even from today, that there might be something that makes you question things more, creates a curious conversation, maybe with a friend today or a colleague, or that you just might start thinking, well, what is human intelligence? What is it what would I be able to do if I could think smarter, actually use and rely on my brain and the data that is inside my brain to make better decisions today? So I'm going to end this broadcast, but I'm thankful for those that have stayed on here and those that will be listening to this in the replay. And let's look forward together on this topic, the importance to increase the muscle of human intelligence. All right, see you tomorrow on the decision table.